So this is wonderful. I would like to welcome everybody to the Design Advisory Panel for January 23rd. So first we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. We just need adoption of the agenda. Everybody received the agenda on the panel members. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Angie, and seconded by Jonathan. All in favor? Okay, good. And there was one set of minutes that we had to approve tonight. Those were the minutes from the January 9th meeting. Was there any concerns or issues with the minutes? Okay, so seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Harry and seconder Hector, all in favor? Great, excellent. Okay, well, we have one very large presentation this evening on for a property on 5th and Howard, and Christine Mays, our city planner, will give an introduction. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through collaboration and community engagement, the Knowledge Partners, that includes the City of Nanaimo, BC Housing, the School District 68, and Snuneymuxw First Nations, have developed a shared vision for Tutexton, which is a comprehensively planned mixed-use development incorporating housing, services, education, outdoor spaces, and amenities on the subject properties. Development permit application DP 1361 is for 3 6-story multifamily rental apartment buildings comprising of a total of 358 dwelling units and a single-story community building, Building 4. Building 2 includes a ground floor commercial unit and 9 live-work units, and buildings 1 and 3 each include a home-based daycare. The subject properties will be zoned to a comprehensive development zone and will be designated mixed-use corridor in city plan. The properties are located on the north side of 5th Street, and that's between Georgia Avenue and Howard Avenue. The subject property falls within Development Permit Area 8 forming character, and as such, the General Development Permit Area Guidelines, Design Guidelines, and the Harewood Neighborhood Plan apply to the proposed development. A number of variances are proposed. The first to increase the maximum height of a principal building, and that's from 20 meters to 20.58 meters for building 1 and to 20.67 meters for building 2, as well as to reduce the required number of parking spaces, and that's from 584 to 339, and to also reduce the number of required loading spaces from 2 to 0, although there'll be some room on site for those. Thank you, Madam Chair, and happy to answer any questions after the applicant's presentation.
Great, thanks, Christine. Who's presenting then this evening?
I'll be presenting, but I think we're going to start off. Do we need to introduce the team here? Should we do a quick round of introductions or get right into this?
It's totally up to you, and then you can just share your screen whenever you're ready. So
okay.
Just need to know who's sort of leading the charge here.
Okay. Well, I'll introduce myself. My name is Alfred Waugh. I'm from Formline Architecture and Urbanism. I'm the principal in charge here. We have Cheryl Peters from BC Housing and Sean from BC Housing and Laura from the Pooney Group, who's project managing this. We have Kyle from our traffic consulting from Bunton Associates. We have Chris from Ladder, our landscape architect. And then we have Todd Wilson, our civil engineer from McLeany. And then we also have Katerina from our firm as well. And of course, I want to lead this off with Joan to say a few words to open up the presentation.
Haitsapka, Semensiaya, Antapakwa Komowit, Tanitsin Athnanemo. Really humble myself and really welcome wholeheartedly each and every one of you to Snuneymuxw territory. We're very grateful for this opportunity to talk about an important partnership and an important way of being with the land, and really grateful that everybody is ready to join this sacred discussion. Haitsapka, Semensiaya, Haitsapka. Alfred?
Okay, so I'll pull up the presentation, and Joan will be helping me with this presentation as well. Just tell me when you can see the screen, and then I'll try to go to full screen as well.
We can see it. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and then it'll go to full. Can
That's-
everybody see the full screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very honored here to be part of this project and working with the partners on this project. There's a lot of work that has been done, and we've been working on this for a few years now to get to this point regarding consultation and having an Indigenous-led process. Let me see here. Let's see if I can get this thing to change. Okay, it's here. Let's see here how to navigate this thing. Maybe it's better just to go to presentation here. Okay. There we go. So basically what we're looking at here is we're looking at filling the needs for housing and enlivening a neighborhood and bringing a community building to it. But it is an Indigenous-led process, so we want to kind of bring together Indigenous ways of knowing and Western knowledge. It will be a 21st century complex, as mentioned, with 358 units, a community building. But the heart of this is also a connection to nature, a connection to some of the value systems that are led by the Nanaimo Nation. This process has involved a careful listening and engagement with the community, with the partners, to understand what are the needs of for this project here. And working mainly with Indigenous groups and being an Indigenous-owned architectural firm, we often look at some of the main principles. There's many elements that come together to create architecture, but in this instance, how does culture influence design, the culture of this Nanaimo people, the culture of Nanaimo, environment, how do we touch the earth lightly? How does this building fit into the context of the community, and what kind of technologies we use for this? Through our engagement, some of the priorities is creating a safe place to live, parks and trails that are easily accessible from the home, stores for daily necessity. There's this whole desire to enliven Fifth Street and activate that. Some of the issues is the issues of the current state of the area of the unhoused and some social challenges within the area, and providing affordable housing for those that need it. So this project attempts to address some of those aspirations and some of those challenges. And then Joan, I'm going to let Joan take over and lead off and how this process has started. And Joan, just tell me when to flip slides.
Okay, can we start there, please, Alfred?
Okay.
And thank you again, everyone, for this opportunity to really try to articulate a way of being that's evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. But as Alfred had mentioned, that we want to lean back on the brilliance of the ancestors to understand what it means to live together. So we're taking advantage of their knowledge system and really thinking about things more deeply. And ultimately, what we want to do is promote and build an environment that brings everything back to the land. For us, we know that the land is the critical piece for building resiliency, coping, and really that deeper healing is what we're all anxious to achieve. But we know that each of these longhouses and a way of being is really bringing us back to the land. And we believe that if we go back to the awe of the land, we'll really start to work together differently and find a different way to affect positive change for everyone that's connected to these lands. And that's ultimately what we're doing. It's a modern interpretation of something that's very ancient, and the outcome, we believe, is going to be so strong that everybody in this neighborhood is really going to be affected by what we're presenting. Next slide, please, Alfred. What's important to us is really to understand the relationality. Our knowledge system is relational, and so this this slide is really speaking to our territory, especially the Tetuxton Mountain. We wanted to start with a real strong physical reminder of that this way of being is still alive, it's still breathing. And more importantly, each of these sacred sites within our territory, they have their own gifts. And, the ancestors of our community lived large and they understood how to be with every part of our community. And that's really important to us is that sacred trust and where we have to take care of all of these different parcels of land and also take care of each other differently. But I think that what we're hoping to come to is that everybody will see how sacred these lands are. And once they see the sacredness of each part of our territory, if this particular development, they might learn how to start taking care of her. And that's what we're hoping to do is people are going to start steward the land differently. And that's when we'll really see the true healing come to be serving the community in a different way. Next slide, please, Alfred. So when we think about that notion of connectivity, it's hard for people to understand when we think about the built environments, just putting a roof over our communities, providing that service. But it's much more than that. It's really that understanding is that with the land is, from our perspective, the longhouse in itself is an ecosystem. So that we think about how an ecosystem works together. This is what we're trying to model, that each of us, doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, we're going to start to work together in a real positive way and really get to that place of, as the old people did, they'd survive, they'd rebuild, and then they'd thrive. And that's where we're trying to draw on all of the sacred parts of this territory so that everybody could start working together with one heart and one mind. And it's that place where the collective self is where the resiliency, as I mentioned, comes from. It's a source of knowledge and important source part of healing. So that's what we're reaching for, is trying to bring that all together in a meaningful way so people start thinking deeply about where they're at in their own lives and how to work together differently. Alfred? And here again, going back to the directions, each of the directions of Mother Earth really have a part to play. The sunrise, the winds coming from the south and the west, providing that healing component, positive change for the community. We want everybody to get a real sense of how the land can start healing, providing all the necessary teachings and way of being that's going to affect change. And without that connection to the land, we really don't have any real opportunities to affect change, but everything starts with that connection. And this is really our way of transforming how we're developing the site, and really to enhance all of the senses and realizing that that's one of the keys to how to live with Mother Earth, is you got to be more aware and in tune and aligned with the land. Alfred? So again, this with every breath and every step, and when you see the design, you'll see how we're walking in a way to make sure that everything is about connecting to the land. Connectivity is everything. So we're asking you to look at this through this with a different lens, not just in terms of the built environment, but how are we promoting a different way? Because it's not unique to Nanaimo or Nanaimo, but everybody wants to find a different way of being. So everything that we touch is going back to the longhouse. And when we think about how the longhouse is built, when families grew, we'd add on to the longhouse. But it's really that understanding that the longhouse is the social, physical, cultural, and spiritual center of our universe. So that's what we're really trying to bring back, is how to be walking in a different way.
Okay, thanks, Joan, for that eloquent explanation of how we're getting to where we are as far as developing a concept to house families, creating 358 dwelling units, a community building that provides daycare and community use for the residents as well as the neighborhood here. And so this opportunity was created by the partners. There's 3 blocks of land, and 2 of them in this development permit are going to be developed. And part of the idea, if you go back to the longhouse concept, is the center of these longhouses were a communal space. And when they had events, families used to pull their belongings to the edge and use that communal place and come together as a community of families. So some of the primary concept of this is to carve out a central green space that everybody can share and celebrate that connection to nature and the outdoors, and have that green space face to Tuxton Mountain, also a gesture to the ocean to the east as well, and then provide ways to come into that space. Now, some of the challenges of this site is the whole site is on a hillside and there's a 5% slope. And so in locating these residential buildings, these 6-story buildings, we had to navigate that slope, also address the height of 20 meters. And it's quite challenging when you have these large, massive buildings. So we wanted to navigate the buildings and respect the context, and then also create this idea of a longhouse, the families surrounding this green space, in the sense that the longhouse contained the families, and then we have the community building up on the upper left-hand corner. We also want to treat water on the site and make a feature out of it. It does rain a lot here, so we have a collection point on the site as well. And then also we want to have some porosity to the site and invite people to enjoy that green space in the center of the building, as well as enliven the streetscape of Fifth Avenue, but provide various means for people to come into this area. And then looking at some of the primary guiding principles of this is, of course, the views to the to Tuxton Mountain, views to the ocean as well. So here's the 3 parcels of land. Parcel A is not part of this development, and our partners from the school district will define how that land is going to be used in the future. But we're also replacing housing here that is going to be integrated into the new complex. We have some various setbacks that we have to adhere to. The lands are still distinctly owned by BC Housing in the city and Nanaimo. And we have an extra, one of the things about the setbacks is we're having a generous setback for Fifth Avenue to provide a broad area for pedestrians and enliven that part of the site. So this is a general overview. I won't go too much into the landscape because Chris is going to talk about it. But the idea here is we have a stratification of public spaces, where up at the top of the site where my cursor is, it's more public. You have 3 daycares and 3 outdoor play areas. Then it starts to descend to a little bit more of a private area here with a stage area, a fire pit, and all the families surrounding the site itself. These are some of the access points, some of the gathering points. And going back to this one here too, I just wanted to kind of note there is a loading area here, some of the technical loading area here, and also fire truck access and loading as well. So there is loading that may not have been communicated effectively in some of the drawings. So this kind of shows where bike parking is. We've received some comments. We can add more bike parking at various areas as noted in the comments. Fire truck access, we have a lane in the back that will use to access the units as well as provide access for the fire department. It is a larger project, and these diagrams kind of start to define how we have a built area of roughly 342,000 square feet of building contained in these 4 structures. And they all kind of navigate that hillside. So as far as the amenities, we have a gathering space and daycare, 3 daycares, and multi-purpose space that can be booked by community members or residences. We have a cafe on the corner to enliven the corner of Fifth Avenue and Georgia Street. And then we also have just kind of showing diagrammatically where the LiveWorks studios are along Fifth Avenue and where some of the townhouses are. And this kind of gives you kind of the full breadth of all the units on the upper levels, and some of the ones in the dark shaded red color are just kind of showing some of the single units still at ground level that aren't townhouses. Some of the administration and amenities throughout the building services, circulation, parking underneath the site. To be efficient, we located most of the parking at the bottom of the site. We have a connection to the community building for end-of-trip services for cyclists. There is shower and so forth here, public parking in this area, and more residential parking and directly below the buildings. This is just another view of the site with the 3 buildings and showing all the various ways of entering the site. Whether you're a pedestrian or the public, the idea is to invite people and not make this area feel exclusive. And also animating the Fifth Avenue, having enough setbacks so that we can bring trees and more activity, and also having a bit of a buffer for some of the LiveWorks studios, so they have that kind of a bit of a vertical separation from the street to give them a bit of privacy as well. And then this is just up on the upper levels, 2nd floor, 3rd, 6th. There's a lot of slides here, so I'm going to kind of navigate through these, and we can field some questions at the end. So these larger plans just kind of show you each one of the complexes. So this is the main entrance to this area, a secondary entrance to this complex. This building is, of course, connected above. Once you get past the townhouses, and then there are apartments. And on the top, all 3 residential buildings will have rooftop gardens to provide an opportunity to grow your own food and create more of a communal atmosphere for eating and so forth as well. And then a little bit more of a private setting. And so I'm just going to kind of go through these. And Katarina, jump in and if you want to say anything specific about them. We have a large amenity space on all the rooftop decks that can be used for families for birthdays or get-togethers and so forth. And then this building has this main entrance off our street. And then down at the bottom level, these are single unit apartments at grade. And then the green are the townhouse units with stairs within side. Now the construction of these buildings is it's a concrete podium for first 2 floors, and then it's wood frame above that. We have these strip balconies. They're not continuous. You have openings, but the idea is we have this screen around these buildings that provide animation on interest to the facade, privacy, and sun shading, and also a reference to the Salish Longhouse, which used to use these posts to support planks. So we take that sort of aesthetic from that building typology. Now the community building is more like a gathering place, a center of activity. It's also a place for where your children can be dropped off during the day. The gathering space is a flexible room that can be rented out for various functions. And this building is going to be compliant with the new 2024 building code. Of course, the townhouses are exempt from that because they have access from outside. But this is just generally showing you different unit layouts. And then as you get up to the upper units, all these units will have the adaptable unit potential. So all the bathrooms are laid out to be adaptable for accessibility, and at least one bedroom is accessible as well, compliant with those. So the idea of the composition of the buildings is you have these bars above the podium that are these kind of wood screened bars, and to keep it is affordable housing. To keep the price affordable, we can use materials on the cladding that are like some cementitious panel or something, and then spend a bit of energy in creating an animated facade that is a reference to the longhouse around the Salish longhouses that I've used in the past. These are some sections. Again, so we looked at various precedents, but the main precedent is kind of we just have this project that's completed up the hill at the Vancouver Island University, the phase 2 of the gathering space. But the idea of these verticals and then these horizontals, and how do you bring that kind of longhouse aesthetic into a large scale development? So we came up with this kind of concept of these screens. Now these screens can be, one of the comments is to vary them and provide some interest. So maybe we can integrate some artwork into some of these screens. Maybe it's a perforated metal pattern or something, but keep that same sort of screen pattern as part of the design. And then here's an axiometric of the balcony system. So these would be steel members. Our preference is to use a wood screen, but as we go, if the project gets approved, we'll be kind of refining the details on these elements for the building. And then as far as context and street views, the Fifth Avenue is the one we want to animate. We have the cafe on the corner, live work, and then of course we have the daycare with plenty of glazing, so you can animate kids coming and going from the facility. Light scoops in the center of each daycare to provide light and deep into the floor plate of the building. Some shadow studies. And these are some of the images of the building. So keeping a fairly simple palette of materials and emphasizing the lightness, even though these are larger buildings, having them, so to speak, these screened wood elements. And then, of course, the importance of nature and what Joan is talking about in trying to create a hub of activity at the center of the building. And then this is the community building in an outdoor covered pavilion that could be used for feasts or play structure when it rains and so forth. And so there's a number of sustainable, it's going to be a step 4 building. So we'll be doing intensive, looking at energy modeling and having a high performance building, looking at low carbon materials, and also looking at how we can use rain gardens and mitigate stormwater runoff, using sun shading, and then of course the rooftop gardening as a part of a learning tool, as well as growing your own food and so forth, and then also reinforcing culture by using a palette of indigenous planting materials, using wood structure above the different occupancy above the podium. And then that's about it. And I think what I'm going to do here, because we we have a time limit here. I'm going to transfer it right over to Chris, and Chris can kind of briefly go over the landscape.
Thanks, Alfred. Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, you're showing.
Okay, great. So this was a really great project for us as a learning experience, and just generally a really exciting project overall. I just want to talk a little bit to begin with about our process in the landscape design, because it does differ from most of our developments that we see. So learning a lot from Joan and the Sunemu First Nation and the way that they look at the land, the process that we used for the design was the land speaks first. So our starting point was listening to the land and allowing it to speak for itself, having it be the main guide for us through the design process. So to do that, we first looked at the land as it was, the history, what would have been there prior to any human involvement, then layered in elements that act upon it. So water, sun, wind, how do all of these things affect the land? Similar to what you would do in a sort of a Western approach to site analysis, but more hands-on and more experiential from being on site. Then we looked at the land as it is now. So this is what we would see when we were standing on the site at the moment, how it's being shaped by human hands already, what remains of its natural systems, how those might be nurtured and protected, and then what we can do to strengthen the nature that's left there. And then at that point was when we started mapping out how we would introduce human experience to the site, and how we would do that through a lens of protecting, teaching, and inviting, so that there would be stewardship on the land. And all of that's kind of ingrained through the landscape design. So I'll go to the next slide. So, oops, went two. So as Alfred mentioned, parcel A is not in the scope, so it's parcel B and C. This just shows an overview of the landscape design, but we'll get into the more specific areas. So tree management, we've kept all the trees that are possible to retain. There's large parkade and regrading along Georgia Avenue, so none of those existing trees are able to be saved, but we have tagged all the ones that are millable, so there are opportunities there for the wood to be reused. So the site plan overall is, as Alfred mentioned, the site slopes from west to east, so there is some definition just from the topography. The landscape design can kind of be thought of as three spaces tied together or braided together through circulation routes, shifting from more public in the west to more private in the east. So the main plaza and lawn in the west side, and then when you move to the center of the site, there's terraced spaces for learning and play, and that's also where we're dealing with a lot of the site stormwater and trying to make it an interactive element. And then the eastern space houses the community amenity for residents of the site, and also provides gathering nodes for the broader community, so that there can be interaction and invitation. As Alfred mentioned, the plant palette for the site is native focused. So not only is it native focused, but it really, a lot of work has been put into making sure that the species are complementary, provide habitat for birds, animals, insects, pollinator support, and year-round food production, so berries and nuts harvestable by humans or animals. And many species that are in the plant palette are able to be harvested and used by humans and have traditional uses, so there is an element of ongoing stewardship with those plants as well. These site sections just simply show the topography of the site and how we've dealt with it largely through terracing, which I'll get into in a little bit here too. So the upper plaza, we're going to move west to east through the site, break up the spaces a little bit. So the western plaza, as I mentioned, has the gathering plaza. It's right off of the community building. It also has the large lawn. It features a double row of trees that integrates retained trees into the pattern where we're able to preserve them, or where we're proposing to preserve them and work to protect them. It has multiple paving surfaces, so a combination of cobble pavers and concrete banding. And then we're dealing with stormwater up here through a rain garden that collects it, and then runnels and a piped connection that lead down to the central stormwater detention area, which we'll talk about when we get to that point. But that way we're not only collecting water from the middle of the site, we're taking it right from the high point, and working to collect as much as we can and infiltrate it back on site. There's a custom sort of shaped basketball court with seating elements around it as well. So there's some recreation up here. And then on the east side, there's a gathering stair connecting this upper plaza area to the middle terraces, creating a focal point at the center of what are the more active spaces. So the middle terraces have a series of 3 terraces that run down the central space. They have, so there's the playground and then 2 open lawns, and then those are offset on the other side next to the building by the 3 outdoor daycare play spaces. The terraced lawns are divided up by reinforced slopes, so we're using a plantable reinforcing system. Then we also have curved concrete seating walls, so seating is integrated into the spaces as well. The terraces allow for us to plant native species, often that are lower growing, at a height where people will be able to more readily interact with them because they'll be higher and closer to their viewpoint. And then I mentioned stormwater before, so a runnel conveys water down that central path area, the ramp that you see, from the upper rain garden to the stormwater detention pond and rain garden in the center. And we're trying to invite visitors to engage with the function of the rain garden by stepping wood decks down to the water level, so where the overflow would be, so that it's accessible for dipping toes or running your fingers through it, that kind of thing. So it can also function as a teaching and engagement tool there, which is great being right next to the daycare spaces as well. So those daycare spaces feature a variety of different programming options, and then we also were focused on providing shade, so we've done so with shade structure, but also with tree canopy over the spaces. And then when we get to the easternmost space, it's largely a common amenity space, common outdoor amenity space for residents of the site. So we've tried to create a shared private habitat space for humans and animals, much like the rest of the site, but this one is reserved for the residents. So we've got picnic tables, a raised wood deck, so that can act as a flexible amenity for gatherings or general recreation, maybe sunbathing if we ever see the sun again. We've got seating walls integrated into the perimeter berm, and we're using berming to create visual and physical separation between this and the more public areas of the site, rather than putting up fences. We're trying really hard to use landforms to create that separation instead of man-made structures that act as walls. We also have it's grayed out here, but just to the right of it, just to the right of the exterior amenity, is a outdoor fire pit area and could double as an outdoor classroom. So planting in the unit entrances, which is all around the site, but it sort of shows up really well on this page, is a mix of native and adaptive species selected for suitability to microclimate exposure and all of that kind of stuff in the locations where they've been placed on site. We have a lot of variety, so we have a lot of areas that will be quite sunny and hot in the summer, and we do have quite a bit of deep shade as well around the buildings. So we've worked really hard to create a multi-tiered canopy of vegetation, which benefits aesthetics, but also really works to maximize habitat creation and value in the planted areas. So we do have landscaping on the roof as well. We have rooftop amenity spaces They provide opportunities for outdoor gathering, cooking, eating, and lots of gardening in raised planters. It's accessible only to residents and whatever guests they want to bring, but it can support programs like traditional medicinal plant production and harvesting, things like that, where you would maybe want to keep it a little bit more reserved from the general public, and make sure that those plants are well protected. And it also, all of these rooftop amenities obviously have views, direct views to Tuxton in the distance, which is a great visual connection. And then lastly, we are proposing along 5th Street to incorporate a linear rain garden into the pedestrian area, so located between the bike lane and the expanded sidewalk area. This linear rain garden would collect surface stormwater from the adjacent hardscapes from the sidewalk largely. Intended to infiltrate runoff from most small rain events, and then it would have an overflow with a municipal storm collection or a storm connection. But it would really go a long way to making the 5th Street frontage a working and functional landscape. And given that the space available is quite narrow, we feel that it's just a vastly better option than putting in a narrow strip of grass or having no soft landscaping at all. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we'd love to have both the interior of the site and the exterior of the site be beautiful and also functional. And that's it for the landscape presentation. So any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, is that the end of your presentation, Alfred?
Yes, and I deeply apologize. We have an animation that's in its final, like we were supposed to get it delivered today, but the animator wife had a baby, so we
Things
can't
have
get a
dropped.
hold of them right now. So
Well, that
we
would have
can
been
show you a draft. I don't really want to show a draft, but if you want to see it, we can show it to you just to give you a rough idea of what it looks like. It's not a final version. Katarina would have to pull it up.
Well, that's up to you if you want to show that. Or we move on to the next phase here.
Well, let's move on to questions, I think. Is it okay if we just send it in by via email tomorrow?
Well, we as the panel, we only deal with this particular meeting, so it would be something that would be going just to the planning, not to us.
Okay, Katarina, can we show this, and can you kind of squint your eyes because it is a draft?
Yeah, I can share the screen.
Okay.
So can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we can
You see a
it.
blank screen, yeah. There's a screen
Okay.
there, but nothing happening yet.
Okay.
Well, great. Even though that wasn't complete, certainly get a different impression of the whole. That's great. Thank you. So, thank you to all of you for a very thorough presentation. I really appreciate that. And the next part of this is that the panel, it's an opportunity to ask you questions and give your feedback. So we will get started with that. But first of all, to panel members, are there any questions of staff before we get going?
I do actually.
No, Hector, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. What's happening with Howard Avenue between, I think, parcel A and B? I think at some point I was looking at the community plan and they were supposed to close that road or making 100% pedestrian. Do you guys have an update on what's going to happen with that stretch of Howard?
At this time, I believe it's just going to be road still. I'm not sure if Lania over there has got any additional comments, but that's the concept right now. Just it will be a road with potential parking on the side to our standards.
I think what we're going to be doing is applying different paving patterns, and we're doing various techniques to slow down traffic in anticipation of whatever the school board does across the street. But there is a a desire to kind of slow down traffic along that area.
Yeah, that's what I had on mind. I don't know where I saw it. Maybe, like as you say, extend that public plaza, put some bollards, reduce the width of the road or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
The second question for the city is that's more a technical question of the panel. How are we supposed to deal with parking variances? Are we supposed to comment on them because they're not really part of the design, or how does that work?
Certainly, I think you've got an opportunity to speak to them. The parking variance itself, I think we discussed it in our last meeting. There is a council policy to address those, and a parking study has been submitted. And so all that's reviewed by various departments within the city. And so through that, city staff will provide a recommendation for that. And I think, in this particular case, there is a rezoning currently still active on its way to being completed. And so we had known that there is going to be a parking variance. And so this is now gone through that review, and we now have those numbers in front of us.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think, Hector, we've had this question before. I think in part we're looking at it, how does the parking fit into the form and character? So when there's a whole, array of parking spots outside or inside, but the sort of numbers, I think ultimately we can't we can say we don't favor it, but it goes on beyond our purview. So anyway, if that helps at all.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, I was just a refresher on what we agree on, how we review parking. Thanks.
Sorry, any other questions from the panel of staff? Hillary, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I have a question that I just have to bring up about the number of below market rate and shelter rate units. And because of the number of people on the call, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up, because I think that there really was an expectation that this was going to include more affordable housing than it does, because we only have, of the entire number of units, about 8% is below market rate and 9% is at shelter rate. So I don't know if there's a chance to speak to that at all, but that is something that I do have a question about with this project in general.
Are you addressing that to staff or to members of the panel?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We can get it clarified before we get going on feedback, so that's fine. If one of the does staff have a comment on that first?
So certainly through the rezoning, this will be a comprehensive development zone, which sort of means it's a very site-specific zone for this parcel and the project itself. And so, through that process, it was envisioned that it would be around 64 units. So of those a number will be replacing the Sonala units, or formerly, I guess, King Arthur's Court. So those were removed. Those will be incorporated back into the development, as well as another 30. And those will be going to the Snuneymuxw First Nations. And so the intent, I guess, is when we built that zone is we built in the ability to increase the floor area ratio. So if there were additional units that they could build on the floor area ratio that was provided to increase the amount of units that were proposed as per the unit. So this, the proposal that's come forward is 358 units, and of those, that is correct, Councillor Eastmere. It is 64 units of those.
Okay, thank you.
Is that sufficient then, Hillary?
I mean, that's the numbers we've been presented. I guess I guess personally hoped to see more. Just given the number of units that we're building and given our housing needs report in Nanaimo, how many sort of below market rentals and deep subsidies we could really benefit from. But if that's the reality of what we're able to build in partnership with BC Housing, then it is what it is. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hector, would you like to lead off with your feedback?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, it's a great project, great presentation. I really appreciate it. I know the effort that is to create projects with multiple partners like Nanaimo First Nations, BC Housing, obviously the designers, the landscape architect. It's great. I love it. I love the density. I like the design. Actually, I disagree with the comment of the city. I think all these shutters or these panels, they look great. They don't need to be different. I think it actually gives a nice consistency. Yeah, so in terms of design, it's great. In terms of how it's going to integrate with the urban context, I love it. The landscape, I think it's great, even though I'm not a landscape architect. My concerns are more like probably on the technical side. Parking, again, huge variance in parking. Also, I would like to understand, like, you guys are already like creating like 3/4 of the parcel as an underground parking. Why not to extend it a little bit more? It would be interesting to hear more about that. Then the other part is coming back into the shelter units. It would be nice if the project manager or BC Housing explains how those shelter units going to be working, in which part of the building. I mean, I'm thinking other projects in the province that have like shelter units. It's always like Woodwards in Vancouver. It's almost like an independent building in Woodwards. So right now it would be interesting to see if, first of all, if they're going to be like supporter shelter or it's just going to be like studio shelters, and how they're going to be related to the rest of the units. So I guess those are my two questions about the project right now.
So if the applicants want to respond to that first, a question about the parking, why you're not adding more, and then the question about what part of the project this housing is going to be located.
I can speak to the parking if you want, Alfred.
Sure.
So Bunt completed a parking variance study. We did some data collection in coordination with city engineering staff. We went to some similar context market rental and affordable rental sites, and we did a demand survey on, I think it was 2 weekday evenings. So we collected some kind of current residential demand in the area. We also did an ICBC vehicle ownership, like kind of a license plate registry data poll for 10 sites. We ended up basing our recommended rate on those ICBC numbers, which was, I think, landing around in the high 0.8s. I think it was 0.87 to 0.89 per unit for recommended supply. With that, we did a bylaw review. There's a pretty comprehensive report on how we got to our rates. We also ended up proposing a range of TDM measures, so transportation demand management measures, to help lower future vehicle ownership and need. Those included transit passes for 1 year to, I believe, every unit, and supplying 2 car shares on site. So Moto car share to be used by future residents, as well as a membership fee subsidy. So the initial Moto fee, which is quite a substantial sum, for on a first come first served basis. The project, the transit passes will be very, I think, really quite well received. You have there's a frequent transit line along 5th Street planned, so right in front of the site. We'll connect to the transit hub at BIU, so I think they'll provide a really strong future transit connection for residents. There's also a bike network. I think it's along Georgia, north-south route that will be going to provide north-south connection for future residents. And the bike storage is also supplied at twice the amount of the bylaw minimum. So that's another TDM measure. So there's quite a lot that went into it. When we put our numbers and proposed rate together, I think the proposed supply ended up slightly above by about 25 or 30 stalls above what we would actually recommend as a minimum compared to the city bylaw. And then one last point, the city is currently updating their bylaw and to kind of align more with the city's vision and the OCP with the city plan. And then we expect that there'll be a lot lower parking rates coming out of that zoning bylaw update.
Okay, and somebody want to answer Hector's other question about the where in the project the shelter housing will be located?
I can.
Hi, I'm Sean. I can help out a little bit here.
Okay, great.
BC Housing, I'm the development manager on the file. I work with Cheryl and Laura. Excuse me. First of all, this is not a shelter program. It's a provincial redevelopment program. So what we're trying to achieve is replacing the existing units with rent geared to income style housing, and then all the additional units will be part of the provincial redevelopment framework, which is geared to non-market housing. So everything below market, for the remainder to balance out the pro forma and create a community that's sustainable.
So just to clarify, so they are not actually shelter units. They are just.
That's correct.
That's correct. RGI.
The language is low income. They're not shelter rate, nor are they shelter clients. And these clients do not, and they had not, while they were Stenala tenants either, had on-site access, as you might see in what we call supportive housing or transitional housing. These were independent rental clients who just needed some help with affordable rental. Those clients, as was our commitment when we bought the property in 2017, if they had to move because the old buildings that we tore down were in such terrible shape, that we do our best to keep them together. And that's what we've done as they've been located off-site. We will bring them back. They form community amongst themselves and they want to be co-located together. So to answer your question of where in the clusters of buildings that we have, in all likelihood for both operational efficiency as well as at their preference to keep them co-located, they would be somewhere in one of the buildings co-located together. But they are not shelter clients. They're low-income clients with a formula that we call rent geared to income, where the magic number is 30% of your income goes towards your rent, and if there's any difference in what it costs to run the building, we subsidize.
Okay. Yeah. No.
And just to dovetail a little bit into that, the design of the units is not a separation of Stenala units and other units. It's all together.
Yes.
There may be separation with airspace parceling because of the nonprofit operators, but there's no separation with, you get this door and you get this door.
Agreed.
And if I could be clear, there is actually a diversity of incomes or rental offerings here. There's low income, moderate income, and rental units that are offering to middle incomes, meaning what we call low end of market or at market. Obviously not a luxury, that's not the business that we're in, but with the intention of providing more rentals on the general inventory than Nanaimo, trying to provide that full range all at one site.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I think it's just one of the documents mentioned shelter, probably was a typo or miscommunication there. No, it's great. I think my only recommendation is because we're aiming to have very reduced parking, and we're seeing it more and more in all these design panels. And looking at the size of the project, I would recommend to have like a room for bike repairs, like an actual bike repair station with all the tools and air pump and a washing station and all that. Which
Yeah, we had that. We'll have that too.
yeah, that
Sorry.
again.
We'll have an option for that. When we get our nonprofit operator, owner operator, it'll be up to them to offer that. As the intention would be, again, firstly to our clients that are living at Tuxton, and then if they wish to expand it to the greater community, that could be an option as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Harry, would you like to go?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to seeing this design rationale. It's really, really nice. I like the rooftop amenities are a good touch. The steel I-beam and louver facade in front of the balconies, really nice. Well, that's about all I got on this, but it's a really nice project. Looking forward to seeing it for fruition. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Harry. Angie?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize, I lost my voice for the most part, but I'll do my best here. But yeah, overall, just really, really exciting project, great presentation. Thanks a lot for going through it all with us. I think it's great to have the community element, and we're seeing a few more projects come through with that. And it's really encouraging to see the shift in some of these developments and how they're being approached. Love the natural elements, getting the wood paneling on the facade. I think that's it brings the scale of the building down a little bit, because this is a large development for the area, and an important site, I'd say, as well. I think all of my questions actually have been answered. The only thing I was curious of is if you're able to go back to the shadow study and just look at I'm just curious about the morning shadow on the western sites.
Yeah, let me just pull that up for you.
Great, yeah. Okay, no, that's good to see. It doesn't impact the other sites too much. Okay, yeah, they're a little bit.
So this would be the worst case scenario in the winter.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be one concern just with the size of the building, but I think that's, there's not a whole lot that can be done to avoid that. But yeah, if anything comes to mind in terms of how the fencing around the amenity space on the rooftops or anything to bring that shadow down a little bit, I think that would be valuable. But yeah, otherwise I think it's a great project, and looking forward to seeing it go through. I don't think we got the parking report with our package, but thanks for sharing the rationale, and yeah, we'll leave it to, I think, staff, if they've got their council, if they've got anything else they need to have there. Thanks again.
Thanks, Angie. Jonathan?
Hello, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm the landscape architect representative on the panel, so I'll focus more of my comments on that. But yeah, I just wanted to just start by saying thank you for the design team and for the knowledge partners on the design team for sharing their knowledge and their design principles with us through this presentation. I think myself and other panel members can learn a lot from that in our own work outside of this panel. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us through your package. And yeah, thanks for your bravery in sharing the draft animation. I think it looked fine for our purposes today. So, and yeah, it was beneficial to see that. So thank you. Yeah, overall for the site design, I like how the layout prioritizes land for pedestrian use, having all the parking underground, creating that, having more of the private amenity space on the rooftops, which opens up the ground level space a bit more for the public. So that's really nice to see, just the emphasis on public space in this project. And the rooftop amenity space is a good way to capitalize on the views from this site. So, so that's yeah, really nice to see, and I appreciate the sensitivity in the design philosophy, the sensitivity to the land and reconnecting people with the land and each other. So I think the design is achieving that quite well. The building design, yeah, I'm kind of on board with what Hector said. I think the building design looks good as it is. I don't think the additional variation is necessary. Maybe if all the buildings along the street look like this, that might be important. But I think since this is such a unique architecture, even if those paneling are repetitive, I think it's still unique and looks good as it is. For the landscape, there was a staff comment about pedestrian scale lighting. Yeah, I guess there wasn't really lighting shown on any of the plans, but yeah, I do think that's a good thing to consider with all the public access and public space in the outdoor amenities. Having good lighting there is probably going to be important for, especially through the winter season where we don't have as many daylight hours, and a lot of those spaces could be used in the evenings with the appropriate amount of lighting. There was a staff comment about adding gateway elements to some of the public pathway entrances. I guess if you do that, just I guess I wouldn't want to take those gateways to kind of take the emphasis away from those corner posts that are a pretty key feature to the design. So yeah, I'm not sure if the gateway elements are necessary, but if you do add them, and just yeah, don't want the emphasis to be taken away from the design itself. There was a comment about retaining wall materials and textures. I didn't really get a good sense of what the retaining walls look like from the drawings, and so a question for the designer, I guess, what's kind of the max, or what's like sort of height range we're dealing with retaining walls on site? If you could give a little more detail on that, please.
So I can speak to the terraced walls that are retaining, or well, the walls that are retaining the terraces in the central area. So they're ranging based on the grading that we have right now, and obviously we haven't gone into detailed grading work yet, but they're in the range of 3 feet-ish. And so what we're proposing for those terrace edges, if I just pull up the, or I'll pull up my screen, might help. There, if you can see that. So these areas in here, so this is all that terrace retaining wall, and it's a planted MSE system is what we're proposing right now. So they're essentially sandbags that are stacked and anchored and cut and then planted with plugs. So, or planted with plugs or number ones, depending on cost and what you're going to put in right away. But it basically, once those plants grow out and it's fully irrigated and everything, it just makes like a green wall, essentially. So you would see these steps come down, but it would just be planting, making up that grade change.
All right, thanks. So I guess, are those the only retaining walls on site, or were there some other ones in the architecture?
Alfred, do you want to speak to the architectural ones? There's retention and stuff around the patios and things.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can get an image. Yeah, the rest is down around that stormwater pond, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, yes. So we have sort of a seating wall integrated into stepped wood decking. So the retention is kind of hidden under the decking. And then on this side, we are sloping down into the detention pond. So this edge here would be retention. It's a concrete pathway, so it would be, a thickened curb kind of thing. And these are wood decks that step down as well.
Yeah, and around the residential, the more private area, we have berms, but they're planted. They're not so much retaining walls.
Yes, correct. And then we have some concrete seating walls that are integrated into the berm in some of the more, so around the private stage area. So if for events and things like that, it can create seating on this side, and then similarly on the other side of the berm facing the sort of public seating or public node here. But those would just be like a finished concrete surface. And then in here, we're not retaining with walls, we're just berming up. And that's also how we're trying to get our soil volume for the trees in this area too.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I guess if the concrete retaining walls are max 3 feet or somewhere between 3 feet and seat wall height, I'm not too concerned. I guess with like the city comment about considering the texture and materials, I think those are low enough that they're probably fine. Just being architectural concrete or whatever. Yeah, and thanks for. I had some earlier concerns about, or just questions about how the public-private access control is achieved. You've explained in the presentation about the berming, but I guess at the walkway entrances, do you have like gates or something, or I guess how would the public know not to go in there?
Yeah, that's right. So we're gated at this point here, and then at this entry point here.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is bermed. So the sort of orange line here shows fence where it's flatter, because we don't have enough space to get the berm high enough. And then in here, where the berm is higher, that's how we're creating that separation.
And that's all wood fencing?
Yeah, correct.
All right, yeah, thanks. In the character images, there was one of mown paths, but I didn't really see that on the drawings. Are you actually proposing mown paths somewhere?
Yeah, so that ties in a little bit to this. I didn't have time to get to it, but we have some areas of native seeding. So specifically, a good point to mention it is in the central bit here. So where you've got this this sort of green lined hatch under the tree canopies here, and the idea is that this path in the center may not be permanent. It might it might be seasonal. It might change every year. So it's a mowed strip through to create a pathway through that space, and then it allows it to evolve and change on an annual basis.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Yeah, I guess the success will kind of depend on how heavily trafficked it is, because a mown path could get kind of muddy and trampled if too many people are walking on it. So just something to be, I guess, ensuring it has extra good drainage so it's not getting too wet in there.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Also, some of the paving in the plaza, you mentioned cobble pavers. I guess just with the texturing on that, I know a lot of the aging population and people with walkers or arthritis are really challenged by cobble textures. So I don't know if your particular pavers are maybe smoother or how wobbly they'll be for people wheeling something over them, but I guess maybe just check the paving, I guess kind of predict, maybe do another study of like how someone with a walker would walk through there. Is there a route to get through avoiding the cobbles that's not too out of the way? Or maybe there's a cobble paver that's a bit less rough or something. Yeah, I guess just be wary of the aging population, and people with arthritis might have challenges with bumpy paving.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've tried to make sure that any areas of cobble are always bridged by concrete. So with the pattern, so the white and obviously the paver looking areas are where we're proposing the cobble right now, and then the 3 tones are all that's all concrete patterning. So that if need be, we can make the forms larger, but the idea being that you always have a fully accessible smooth concrete surface to move from, like, through the plaza space, and then the cobble is sort of accenting it, but never blocks off areas entirely.
Okay. And the planting plan, yeah, I appreciate the use of native species. There's just one that stood out to me. The wood sorrel, Oxalis oregano. I guess your indigenous knowledge holders on the team, I guess, kind of have the final say on what plant would be considered indigenous to this area or not. But just from my own experience, I thought that the wood sorrel was not native to this particular region. I just stands out to me because early at the beginning of my career, I spec'd that plant on a project in Nanaimo, and there's a bit of a controversy with the local naturalist community. So I guess I think from the more colonial naturalist perspective, I think that plant's considered invasive in the Nanaimo area, but native to the broader Pacific Northwest. So maybe just look into that one a bit more, just to confirm it's okay here. So.
Yep, absolutely. I know yellow wood sorrel is considered invasive, which is not what we're proposing, but we'll definitely dig into that. Make sure that we're not proposing anything like that.
And the variances, the building height is pretty minimal variance, so no concerns there. The parking variance is pretty significant. It's almost 41% reduction, but thanks for sharing the info about the parking study, because I think that helps justify that. And it's good to hear about the car share spots and transit passes and those initiatives. Like this location would be pretty easy to live without a car. There's a shopping center nearby. Pretty much anything you need in your daily life is within a walking distance of here, and so I think this is a good location for people who don't own a car to live. But yeah, I think it's that parking reduction seems okay to me based on the study and what I just said. So no issues there from me. Just I wouldn't mind a little more clarification on the loading space reduction. So I guess maybe if you could give a little more detail on why 0 are needed, just so we know.
I'll jump in here. There's 3 provided on site and there's no residential loading requirement as per the bylaw. So the uses that are triggering a requirement are the non-residential, so the retail and community space and daycare. So we're not proposing 0 on site. We're proposing 3, two that are on the lane, and 1 that is between the buildings and fronting on access from 5th Street. And through our work in our report, which, sorry you guys did not get that, we also proposed a loading management strategy, so like a communication plan between the different uses, so they can reserve a loading stall and can coordinate between the residents and the non-residential uses.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. So that wraps up my comments. Thanks again to the design team. It's a really exciting project, and I think it'll be a good benefit to the community and inspiration for other developers in the area, hopefully. So thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hillary?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much to the presenters and all of the knowledge partners involved in this project. It is really exciting as far as a densification and community growth standpoint, and just the amount of effort and mindfulness that's gone into situating the building and the orientation of the different buildings. It's really cool to see. So I think, yeah, it's a cutting edge development for sure, and will be a really positive impact in that neighborhood. I appreciate the panel's comments. The questions about, Jonathan, your questions about the pavers were a question for me as chair of the accessibility committee. We get a lot of feedback around the uneven surfaces of the pavers. So I think, as was mentioned, you could maybe expand the shape of some of those concrete, the flat concrete areas to allow for more ease of movement for people with accessibility challenges. I totally understand the parking variance, and excited to hear about the car share spots. That's great. And the transit passes, that's really progressive. I do have concerns about only having 8 accessible spots of the 248 parking spots that you're going to have. So that's only 3% of the spots. I think you should really be aiming for more than that. Of the people who need vehicles, I think many of them will be people with accessibility challenges. So yeah, trying to bump that up to like 10% minimum, would be really nice to see. Appreciate the clarity around the loading spaces. That will be helpful for people moving in and out, obviously. On the curtain wall, those are, my understanding is that those are like glass walls, incorporating like pointillated or bird-friendly glazing on those windows. I'm hoping, I know that's part of our new design guidelines, so I'm not sure if that gets incorporated or not. And I do have a bit of concern about the shadow study, especially on the impact of the one residence at 297 Harewood Road. I know that house has like a well-loved garden in the back that benefits from the sun that they currently get. So I will just mention that, yeah, the shadowing on that house in particular, I do have concerns about that. Other than that, I think the buildings look fantastic. I love the wood screening and all of the reasons for that. I think it looks really beautiful, and yeah, the landscape looks great, and I love the idea of using the berming rather than the fencing. So yeah, overall it's a gorgeous looking project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Thank you, Hillary. Jeez, I'm losing my voice now too. Okay, just add my comments now, I guess, as last but not least. So yeah, first of all, thank you for a very thorough presentation, and really appreciate all the different perspectives that have come together and groups that have come together to form this knowledge partnership. I think it's wonderful, and it's great to see this kind of project come into shape. And first of all, in terms of commenting on the form and character, I think you've really come up with a sensitive and very thoughtful plan for not only housing, but also for shaping a community. I think this project will eventually be really a landmark in this area. So you're really setting up a major precedent for it, and really appreciate that. I think it's going to shape this community into the future. Your design, it's got a really unique character, and again, I'm going to concur with my colleagues here that definitely I don't think you need to do anything in terms of changing the general design of it as it is. I think it looks great. I also want to say how much I appreciate the range of housing options within one project in terms of both sides, respect for different kinds of income levels, relationship to the whole as a community. That's wonderful. It sort of reminds me a little bit back in the 70s. I remember BC Housing offering income rated apartments to people, low income, because I was low income at that time, in regular apartment buildings just based on your income. So you were actually integrated with other people. You weren't separated off into some sort of, special building just for poor low income people. So it's really wonderful to see this integration of different income levels in one project, and I think it's great. I also appreciate how the architects have thought out private and public space in this whole project. Again, just respect for how some people want, you need some privacy, but you also want this public mingling space, and you've got a really great balance of that. And of course, that's really helped by the whole range and amount of amenity space that you're giving. It's very generous between the sort of central courtyard, rooftop amenity spaces. Speaking of that, I'd say I'm in favor of the parking variance, in part because I'm so happy to see a property with all this housing without the rest of the land taken up by a parking lot. And so it's lovely that that's given over to more of a recreational living space. And I also really appreciate the manner of incorporating the Indigenous elements and their philosophy into the whole. And I'm really happy to see more evidence of the Sonoma's people within the community as a whole. I always felt Nanaimo was really lacking in that area. So, their contribution to this particular project, people living there, and also some of their artwork, just their thoughts and how it's constructed and designed, all add to just the whole vibrancy of our community. So basically, I'm really, really pleased with it overall. I think I'm just going to go through my comments here, but yeah, the one staff comment that sort of caught my eye, and it also hit me, was I had a really hard time sort of figuring out where the entrances to the primary buildings were, the residential buildings. Maybe it was just the illustrations you provided. I couldn't really tell where they were except on the floor plans. So I'm just wondering if they're sort of very visible, so that somebody walking along the street, for example, can they tell where they enter that building? If they're coming to visit somebody, are they able to find that entrance? The only entrance that I thought was clear was where the building that had the cafe in the corner, but I don't know if that's even an entrance into part of the residential area. So maybe the applicants could clarify that for me a little bit.
Okay. Well, I can show it on plan first, and then, as we flush out the design, we can certainly emphasize that with either, canopies and so forth. Looking at here, so this is the main entrance to this building here. That plaza on the corner here, this is also the entrance to the residential area as well. So
You're
there's a
gonna
shared
share your
entrance.
screen?
Sorry, I thought I was sharing it. I'm talking away here. Okay.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so here is the main entrance to this lobby here. It's more diagrammatic because it's the site plan
Right.
for that building. And
That
then,
was where the cafeteria was, right?
yeah. So there's the cafeteria here, and then this would be the lobby entrance for the building. So they share that kind of covered canopy.
Oh, okay, they're together in there, yeah.
Yeah, and then over here would be the main entrance to this building along this street, and that of course serves this building as an L shape when you get up higher. And
Oh,
then
okay.
and then over here is the main entrance to this building. And what we thought to do to articulate that is to have a broad canopy over these entrances outside that's partially supported by the building to announce those entrances and provide cover similar to the natural cover you get from, you know, this kind of entrance here where you have the entrance to the residential area. So we want to kind of create that kind of sheltered entrance over here as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it didn't really show up in any of your views that there was that entrance, but I didn't see any other ones.
Yeah.
Okay, helps clarify that. And I think everybody's really touched on all the other comments I had here. Yeah, I was glad to hear that you're doing arranging some things with a car share as well. And I agree. It's a great neighborhood. I think for it's close to all the amenities, transportation, etc. And I think eventually we all have to get used to fewer cars around and having fewer cars. So this might push that. The only thing you might run into is that people will start parking over at the shopping center. That's something that happens constantly downtown, where I've even seen ads for offices for rent saying, "Oh, there's easy parking over at the mall," as if that's their parking. So that's one of the issues you might come up in future, but not really part of our purview in this design panel. So okay, so with that said, just need to go through possible recommendations here. I'm not hearing any strong objections to the variances, so I think we'll probably put our support behind that. In terms of recommendations, panel members, you can just help me with this see if I've got everything. We've had one consider rooftop deck fencing does not increase shadow on the neighboring properties. I'm not sure if you wanted to include that as a recommendation, Angie.
Yeah, I think that's worth noting, just to try to reduce the impact of the shadow as much as possible.
Okay, and consider adding sufficient pedestrian lighting through the site for nighttime visibility. Is that a suitable recommendation, Jonathan? I think you mentioned that, and I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and ensure the mown path has good drainage. Have that in there.
Yeah, sure.
And consider the type of paver used on the plaza to ensure it does not make mobility difficult. Okay, and do you want them to look into the indigenous nature of the wood sorrel, or leave that out?
Yeah, you can note that.
Okay, and consider adding more accessible parking spots. And Hillary, did you want to make a comment about? We didn't get an answer from the applicant regarding the glass curtain walls, if they are using what did you call it? The type of glass curtain wall for reducing the bird strikes?
Yeah, like pointillated glazing.
So consider using pointillated glazing,
or
on the glass.
Pointillated / bird friendly glazing.
Yeah, it's sometimes a frit glass or a film.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like most of our projects, especially the projects we're doing in Ontario. It's mandated, so it's going to be a sort of a ceramic frit dot pattern.
Oh, they put a pattern into the glass. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's a dot pattern. If you want to, you can get creative with it, but
Okay. So, all right, we'll have that in there. So that's 7 recommendations. Did I miss anything?
I think maybe just the shadowing at 297 Harewood Road.
What do you want me to say about it?
That could maybe go with the earlier recommendation about the rooftop.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but maybe just specifying. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So 7 recommendations. So could I have a motion to accept the presentation or the project as presented with those 7 recommendations, as well as support for the variances? And Jonathan's going to motion, seconder. Angie, all in favor? Great. Okay. Well, I want to thank the team for coming in and filling us in, and really appreciate what you shared. Laura, did you want to say something? So.
Yes, I think Joan might want to make some closing remarks. I just want to make sure we don't sign off before that time. Yeah.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank the design team. You know, it's not easily articulated a way of being that's going to really change how we see each other, more importantly, how we see Mother Earth, and really taking that responsibility, the full responsibility of what we refer to as a sacred trust. And so it's not common in my lived experience for a family to come together in this way, and especially thank BC Housing for giving us that opportunity and taking that leadership to try to showcase how we can really affect positive change. And, you know, for us is the greatest teaching that has been given to us is love and respect. And that's really ultimately where we're going, is how to love each other, how to take care of each other, and how that the land in herself is the one who's going to teach us how to do that. You know, it's not stated clearly enough, but it's understood that when the land heals, you'll see the energy and how she's going to change everything, and really to change this, how we're with each other. It's in my heart and my mind, it's a model that we hope that many people will follow, because if we, at every touch point, if she heals, we'll see big changes for the city, our community, and everybody that lives here. And that's where we're going. And it's the design team, BC Housing, they're so humble in their presentation. We're so honored and gifted that they're sharing their knowledge with us so we can walk differently. I hope that's a story that we tell. It's taken us a while to get here, but look at the outcome. It's just profound. You know, when you can see from an ancestral lens, the past, present, and future is always seen in one view. It's the first time you can really see it, how the old people saw the land, how much they loved the land, how much they love each other. And I'm prayerful that everybody takes that away, that this is a milestone in my mind, that we really got here, and thank the city for embracing this way of being, because its voice is loud, and that Thunderbird that we haven't had a chance to showcase, but she's the one that's really guiding us, the one who lives on Mount Benson. So, Haitzapka, Simansiaya, Haitzapka.
Yes, thank you, and look forward to seeing this project to fruition. So great, thank you very much. Okay, we don't have any other business this evening, so if I could have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Yes, Angie, seconder, Harry, and all in favor? Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you.